why do so many people feel lost and unhappy, and what can they do about it?
People feel lost and unhappy is basically part of what it means to be human. And there's an irony in having the big brains that we do. We developed a very large human brain over the past 40 million years for all kinds of reasons. I mean, it gives us it's our genetic advantage that we could say. It gives us help. It's our survival. We're not fast. We're not very good climbers. We don't have a lot of hair on our bodies, but we've got these big prefrontal cortex of the brain. The problem with that is that we can understand ourselves. We're the only species, as far as we know, that knows that Tom knows he's going to die. For example, you can understand the nature of your own existence, but you can't actually make your own existence work in a fundamentally different way. And so knowing yourself, the essence of consciousness is one that gives you incredible transcendental information, but at the same time, it programs in a whole lot of misery. So for example, we have a tendency to our genetic proclivities force us to chase money and power and admiration and pleasure, because those are the things that help you pass on your genes. You get more animal skins and flints and buffalo jerky in your cave, and you're going to have more mates, basically. Yep. And so Mother Nature wants you to do that, but it's not going to make you happy. And you think that you want to be happy. The big prefrontal cortex says, I want to be happy, because you're so conscious. But the things that will help you pass on your genes are not the things that are going to make you happy. Mother Nature doesn't care if you're happy. And that's why it's so much more work. If you live by, if it feels good, do it. You're going to be a mess.
That's so
what it comes
weird,
down to.
but so true. So I had a realization a long time ago. I'm very grateful that this happened early. It was, of course, born of misery, but I became so profoundly unhappy chasing money. I used to show up every day saying, I am here to get rich. And that provided me a lot of energy. So as a child of the 80s, growing up in Tacoma, and I really grew up on the edge of Tacoma. It's probably more accurate, even though my address really was Tacoma, it's more accurate to say I grew up in Puyallup.
Yeah, Puyallup, where the fair was.
Oh, yes.
Where the Western Washington State Fair, now the Washington State Fair.
That is all accurate. And it felt almost rural. And so I felt like I was living in the middle of nowhere. And John Hughes films showed me sort of this upper middle class Chicago suburb, and I was obsessed with getting a big house. And so I used to tell everybody, I'm going to get rich, I'm going to get rich. And my family was like, and I had friends that and I could literally walk to a trailer park. It was like that kind of part of Tacoma. And so my family, who were all sort of blue collar, just thought that was hilarious. And they're like, yeah, right. But I was really obsessed. And so I,
were you a good student? Were you smart?
I was, but I was cheating. So I was I did very well in high school from cheating. And then in college.
Literally from cheating.
Yeah. Like I was charming.
Yeah.
So I could get away with murder.
So you were incredibly clever.
Ooh, that's interesting. My identity is not that of someone who is clever. So it was very much somebody who was charming. So I could make people laugh.
Yeah.
And so I could get away with things. So whether that was asking my friends to let me literally take the test off of their desk and put it on mine so I could show my work.
Right.
But of course I was showing their work. But when I got to college, and I'm not even sure what gave me this insight, but I was like, I'm going to be spending a lot of money, taking on a lot of debt. I should actually learn what I'm here to learn. So I set a mantra to myself: sink or swim, A or F, I won't cheat, not even once. And I ended up doing very well. In fact, I did better in college than I did in high school.
Were you happy in college?
I was. When I graduated, though, I was like, I'll never go back. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I'm going to get a master's and then a PhD. I was like, get me the fuck out of here. But it was film, so it was amazing.
Yeah, and you were living by the dictates of your own integrity. You were a man fully alive.
Yes.
You were not shading the truth.
Very true.
It's very important. And this is what's, there's a famous speech by, and I can't remember who it was, the guy who went on to become the president of the University of Texas, who became famous because he gave a commencement speech that was about make your bed. If you want to actually get your life on track, start by making your bed. What that was to ask people to become men and women of integrity. And that means even when nobody's looking at your bed, make your bed, because you're a person of integrity. You went to college and you said to yourself, I'm going to be a person of integrity. I am not going to do that thing because that thing is not the right thing. And in so doing, you ordered your mind in a different way.
It's really interesting. So I wish that my life was like a straight trajectory after that, but it becomes the darkest period of my life becomes right after college when I feel lost. I feel hopeless. I have no sense of how I'm going to put things together. That was a really scary time because when you don't feel that you can affect the change that you want, it really, for me, well, let's go back to what you said at the beginning. So I call that the directives of evolution. So if you think of AI has to be given instructions. You have to want a high score, or you have to want to stay within the lanes if you're a car, whatever. And humans, as nature's AI, need directives. And so, like you said, get a mate, that's definitely one of them. And man, I really hope at some point later in the conversation, after we've really gone into your book, we get to the fact that people are 30% less likely to get laid now, which is absolutely fucking terrifying to me. But
I have the solution for greater happiness on college campuses.
Really?
It's more love.
Yeah? Now, what do you mean by that, though?
I mean, actually more relationships, more romantic relationships. This would actually solve a lot of the misery on college campuses today, actually. What were you trying to do in college? You probably wanted to fall in love, right?
No. No. So I didn't. So I had a girlfriend at the very beginning of college, like the first few weeks, who I'd met in high school.
Right.
And I broke up with her and decided that to get into film school, I had to really buckle down. And I wasn't going to date. I wasn't going to party. I wasn't going to drink. I wasn't going to do drugs. And so I effectively locked myself in a room for 4 years to get good at filmmaking. So it was a very
different kind of experience than a lot of people.
But now I want to get people back to your book because it is absolutely life-changing. So I would show up every day trying to get rich. That was my whole shtick.
As an entrepreneur.
Yep. And then because I wanted to build a studio.
Right.
Became profoundly unhappy pursuing that. And the lesson that I ultimately ended up learning was that all that matters in life is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And so meaning and purpose matter.
Right.
And so I had better figure out that money wasn't going to bring me happiness. I was living the cliche. And so I needed to attach meaning and purpose to what I was doing.
How did you figure that out, that money was not going to bring you happiness?
So on paper, I was worth more money than I'd ever been worth. So I was making more than I'd ever made. I was making like maybe 85,000, something like that, which for me, that was
good
at
money.
The time, that was a lot of money. And on paper, I was worth about $2 million. So I was like, okay, theoretically, and paper money is very different than real money, but on paper, I was worth millions of dollars and I was still profoundly unhappy. So
and what did you think? If I'm getting, like, see your limbic system of your brain is saying, Tom, go for the money, then you'll be happy. So what did you imagine was going to happen to you if you had a whole bunch of money that would actually make you happy? Or did you actually form an image at all? You just thought that if I have more money, I'm going to mysteriously be happy?
Yes. Then once I wasn't, I asked myself maybe the right question, which is what did I think was going to happen? And I realized that I thought I would feel about myself the way that I felt about other people that had money when I looked at them.
Yes.
And I admired them.
Okay,
and so I thought I would
social
admire
comparison.
myself.
Got it. And you would actually, so social comparison led you to the admiration of other people who had been successful. So therefore you would have that sort of an admiration of yourself.
Yes.
And that self-admiration would have been the genesis of your newfound happiness on the basis of your money.
And if I were as able to articulate that to myself as you were just now, I could have saved
58
myself a lot of struggle. But
I couldn't either at 22, but yeah.
And so reading your book really began to bring home this idea that there are two different types of intelligence. And so at the time, I'm haunted by this idea. Genius is a young man's game. I feel like a really late bloomer. I end up spending all this time chasing money. I take this huge break from pursuing my passion and building that skill set. So now I really feel like I'm behind the eight ball. And my whole life has felt like that. And reading your book and the whole punchline of there's these two grand movements in your life. And if you understand them, then you really can avoid this decline in misery.
Right.
You open your book with a story that I will never forget. And when I put the book down, I was like running around the office, like telling anybody who would listen that story. If you don't mind, walk people through the airplane.
10 years ago, I was the president of a think tank in Washington, D.C. And I was having these profoundly disturbing thoughts. Am I on the right track? Where does this lead? What is my goal?
But you're really successful at this point.
Yeah. I mean, successful for, for entrepreneurs in Southern California, what does successful mean? To be the president of a think tank in Washington, D.C., maybe not so much, but everybody's got a dream. It's a great country, isn't it? And I was the president of a big, prominent think tank in Washington, D.C., and I was in my late 40s. So I was more or less the same age that you are right now. I was looking at my life saying, okay, buddy, what's the end game? And look, I had done research. I'm a social scientist. I do work on human behavior. And I had never really trained these tools on myself. And I was really disturbed by this because I didn't actually see what the future could actually bring that would be better, or I would be happier. And as I was kind of going through this, I was doing what I always did, which is basically fly around and ask people for money. I was a nonprofit organization. I had to raise $50 million a year. And I was giving 175 speeches a year, which is super fun. I love
Jesus.
Yeah. And so it was like running for the Senate and never getting elected, basically, which is, for running for the Senate, that's probably the best thing. So you don't have to be a senator. And as I was thinking about this, kind of an existential crisis, what path am I on? What am I supposed to do? I mean, some of that was evident. I have a family. I'm in love with my wife. I love my kids, but I didn't have an understanding of the course of my life. I mean, my religious life is figured out, but I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing. What is Arthur Brooks supposed to be doing such that I can be happier as a person? And frankly, I wasn't very happy for lots of reasons that anybody can understand. I mean, and I heard a conversation behind me on a plane one night that changed my entire direction. It was a couple, and it was nighttime. It was like about 11 o'clock at night, so it was dark. And so people were doing what people do on airplanes at 11 o'clock at night. They're drinking or they're watching a movie or they're sleeping. But I could hear the couple talking, and I could tell it was a man and a woman. I could tell by their voices that they were elderly, clearly old. And I suppose that they were probably married based on their conversation. I couldn't quite make out the husband's words because he was sort of mumbling, but the wife's voice was very penetrating. It was coming through the chairs. And he mumbles and she says, don't say it would be better if you were dead. And then he mumbles some more and she says, it's not true that nobody remembers you. It's not true that nobody appreciates you anymore. And I'm thinking, this is a guy who, holy cow, he's not a big shot. He's not an entrepreneur. He's not somebody who lived up to his own expectations. He got the experience or the education or the job that he wanted. And now life is kind of over and he's disappointed. And that makes sense, or it made sense to me. Because look, if you're a big shot, then you're going to die happy. And the lights go on at the end of the flight, an hour later or so, and I'm kind of curious. It's not prurient interest, but look, this is my laboratory as a social scientist. It is an overheard conversation, perhaps. And so I turn around and it's one of the most famous men in the world. This is somebody who's going to do 10 times as much with his life as I ever am. He's rich, he's famous, he's universally admired, he's not controversial for stuff that he did many, many years ago. And I thought to myself, my whole model's wrong. The problem that I have, the direction that I'm going is incorrect because my model of satisfaction is wrong. Here's the model the world tells you. Here's the limbic system of your brain, the ancient part of your brain that was extant a million years ago, and all of marketing and entertainment, which is a distributed digital limbic system, says work hard, make money, be successful, be admired, be envied, bank it, die happy. And it's wrong. And in your heart, it's wrong. Because you're always asking yourself, hey, Tom, what have you done for me lately? That's what your mind is asking you. It's not good enough that you founded a company a long time ago and it made a bunch of money. It's not good enough. We need to excel. We need to achieve. We need to create value. That's how we're created as people. And this guy was blowing away the world's theory of happiness, of satisfaction. And I said to myself, I don't want to be explaining to my wife, Esther, on a plane 30 years from now, 40 years from now, I might as well be dead. And so I set myself to crack the code.
If you like that clip, check out another powerful clip right here, and I'll see you there.